Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you a fun little project that you can do with my new Strawberry Festival sister set that you can find at FlynnSistersSupplyShop.com. This set is so cute. It comes with 4 different patterns of adhesive vinyl, a 10 by 10 UVDTF element sheet, and a 10 by 6 floral lace sheet that I absolutely love. I'm going to show you how to use all of this in the video, but first we have to start by prepping our cup. I'm going to tape off the bottom of my tumbler today. If you want more information about how or why to tape off the bottom of your cup, I will include some beginner videos down below in the description box that you might find helpful. Once I've got the bottom rim taped off, I'm going to run it through my edge trimmer on the second bottom rung up just to get that nice crispy edge. After we have our tape laid down, I'm going to roughly sand the outside of our tumbler that we're going to be painting and epoxying. Once I have that lightly sanded, I am going to clean it with some rubbing alcohol and paper towel. And now we can start on our base paint. I'm using ColorShot's Stiletto Red, and I'm only spray painting about a third of the way up from the top and a third of the way up from the bottom. I'm not going to fill the whole thing in because I'm only going to be glittering those 2 sections of my cup. Once my paint is dry to the touch, I'm going to lightly coat it with some epoxy. I'm using my Flynn Sisters Fast Cure epoxy today, and we want to get a nice light even coat. You don't want it to be thick or have lines in it. We just want everything to be nice and evenly coated because we're going to be using that as the adhesive for our glitter. And if there's a bunch of wrinkles and ripples in our epoxy application, you're going to be seeing that through the glitter. And if it's too thick, your glitter will lose its texture after application and look kind of like an oil slick. So it's really important that we have a consistent, light, even coat before we apply our glitter. You'll notice I'm only applying glitter to those 2 sections that we painted, and I'm avoiding the middle because I'm going to be covering the middle with vinyl later anyway, and why waste the glitter? Once I've got my glitter applied evenly and it's looking beautiful and shiny and we can see that texture in the glitter, I'm going to aggressively tap off all of the excess, and I'm actually going to put this on my turner to dry. We want this to dry for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on the type and brand of epoxy you're using. I don't want to put this upside down on my drying rack to dry because I left that section unglittered. I don't want anything shifting around, which is why I'm going to put it on my cup turner to dry. Once our glitter is dry, I'm going to tape off the bottom of my cup, and now we're ready to apply our first coat of epoxy. For my first coat of epoxy today, I'm using my Flynn Sisters Fast Cure, and I want to get everything nice and evenly coated. I did not seal my glitter first because I just used all one color, and it's a fine glitter cut, so I didn't think it would be necessary to seal it. Once I've got my epoxy applied nice and evenly, I'm going to hit it with my torch to pop any remaining bubbles. I'm then going to remove my tape, and then I'm going to put it in my drying box from RESINERS to speed up my dry time. Yeah, I'm using a fast cure epoxy, but I can take that full cure time from 4 hours down to just about an hour and a half or under 2 pretty consistently with this box. If you want to check it out, I will link it down below along with a discount code. I repeated that for a second time, so our cup got nice and smooth with just 2 coats of Fast Cure. And now we're ready to move on to the next step. I want to sand around my top rim to expose a fine line of stainless steel. You can use anything from a 60 to 220 grit sanding block to do this. I want to expose a fine line of stainless steel here at the top so that our final coats of epoxy will adhere to that to create the final seal for our tumbler on the outer rim rather than the very top rim where it's more vulnerable. I also want to go around to the sides and just sand down any kind of pokey bits. If you don't have a sanding block, you could just use any kind of sanding paper. That'll work as well. Once we've got everything sanded and smooth, we're going to clean this up with some rubbing alcohol and paper towel. And now we're ready to move on to the next step. My favorite part about this Strawberry Festival sister set is this floral lace UVDTF sheet. I first want to cut off all the excess carrier sheet plastic stuff from the sides, and then we want to cut it exactly in half because I'm going to use these 2 strips to flank the top and bottom of our tumbler design. So once I've got them all trimmed up, I'm going to anchor my strip onto the cup with a piece of masking tape and just make sure that it's nice and straight when I go to wrap it all the way around the cup. Once I'm confident that I have it on there straight, I'm going to carefully peel back that back transfer sheet and then very carefully press it firmly with my vinyl squeegee or just your hand if you're more comfortable with that. Take your time making sure everything lines up nicely at the end, and before we press on the end, we want to peel back from the beginning where we started so we don't accidentally apply that UVDTF onto our masking tape or the front of the carrier sheet at the beginning of where we started. I hope that makes sense. If you're looking at it as you're doing it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You can also kind of fussy cut the ends of your strips here to make sure that the pattern doesn't have so much of a blunt edge. I did remember to do that at one end, but I didn't remember to do it at the front end. But whatever, it still looks cute. I'm going to repeat these same steps for our bottom section. So we have that beautiful floral lace pattern on both the top and the bottom. And then for that remaining 2 inches that we have through the center, I am going to cut that 2-inch strip of vinyl. This red plaid pattern is also included in that Strawberry Festival Sister set. And once we have our 2-inch strip cut and we've removed any salvaged edges to make sure everything's perfectly straight on that strip, I'm going to lay my architect ruler flat against my cup. This architect ruler will give me a perfectly straight line down the side of the cup, and I'm just going to mark that with Sharpie to give me a base point to line up the edge of this plaid. This is going to make my life way more easier when I'm trying to line this strip up through the center. Once I've got that vinyl placed, I'm going to trim off the excess through that back seam there, trying to line up that plaid pattern with the seam as well as I could to make it as least noticeable as possible. But hey, it is what it is. I also placed the seam in line with the seam from the floral pattern as well. Once we have that vinyl laid through the center, I'm going to start applying our beautiful floral UVDTFs. I'm just going to cut these out of that 10 by 10 element sheet, and I'm going to place them in a way that will kind of flank the quote decal that I'm going to put on later. So I'm going to do the 2 largest floral bouquets from this element sheet and kind of place one lower on the plaid pattern and one kind of higher up on the opposite side of where my decal will be. Once I've got those applied, I'm going to apply my quote decal, which I've already cut with my Cricut using just regular adhesive vinyl. And I cut an offset for the quote, a very, very thin offset, just enough to help that black stand out against the pattern. I already layered the 2 decals, and now I'm just transferring them onto the cup using the hinge method like I normally would. Once I've got that decal applied, I'm going to move on to putting some little fun details like these little ladybugs and the butterflies. Be mindful that when you apply this vinyl decal, you will see some of the texture from the vinyl DTF underneath it. So if you want to do this in layers and apply epoxy layers between the decals and the UV DTF so you won't see that, you can. But with this plain black and white vinyl, you didn't really see a lot of that texture underneath after it was applied and there was epoxy over it. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, and actually it saved me a lot of time to be able to try and do this all in one step. Additionally, if you're worried about disturbing that floral lace UVDTF while applying the other ones, I would go ahead and put a layer of epoxy in between the layer that we did the vinyl and the UVDTF lace and all of the other UVDTF and decal later on. I really hope that all makes sense. All right, so next we're going to apply our final coats of epoxy. You'll notice that for these final coats, I've left the tape off of the bottom. That's because I'm going to extend this epoxy coat down below our designed tape line. This is going to create the final seal for our tumbler just right above that very bottom rim, which I find to be the easiest way to finish the bottom of my cups. I also find it to be more durable. Again, if you do not want to finish your cups this way at the bottom, you can skip that. But that's how I do it, and that's how I keep that edge looking nice and crispy, is I don't tape off for the very final coats. I let them come all the way to the very bottom rim, and then I come in with some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel and wipe off any excess that might have made its way to the very bottom, which we don't want it there, right? So then after I get my epoxy applied nice and evenly and everything's cleaned up, we're going to hit this with our torch to pop any remaining bubbles. Then it's back in my dryer for that fast dry time, because it can cut my Artist Cure dry time down from 8 to 12 hours, almost down to 4. And I'm talking dry, and that's with Artist Cure that normally takes a lot longer. I would still wait the full 24 hours before cleaning and gifting to somebody as we normally would, but this dry box does really help me cut down on time because I'm always busy with my kids and trying to get tutorials filmed. Anyway, but that's it for this tutorial. I love how this cup turned out. I love these new sister sets. We have 3 different new ones that you can find on our website now. Let me know what you guys thought about this video in the comments, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I try to upload videos every week. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. If you love that last video, you can check out the next one here, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for more great content. You can shop our products at FlynnSistersSupplyShop.com and subscribe to our channel for new videos every week. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.